The 5 trillion shadow family.
By now, I'm sure you're all familiar with BlackRock, the massive $9
Good old BlackRock.
trillion asset manager that owns everything. But while BlackRock is the world's largest asset manager in terms of AUM, one thing to note is that the power is actually somewhat distributed. At the end of the day, BlackRock is a public company, and its CEO and co-founder Larry Fink only owns 0.27% of the company, or approximately 320 million.
How much was one share? 500-ish currently?
It's the same thing with most of the other big players as well. Charles Schwab manages $7.13 trillion, but they too are a public company that's worth over $100 billion. And though its founder, Charles Schwab, is extremely wealthy, in the end, his $7 billion stake only equates to 6% control. Vanguard even takes it one step further. While Vanguard manages $7.2 trillion, they don't even have any shareholders. Vanguard
You know what's, by the way, the best part about all of these companies? They own stock in each other. And that way it's hard to fail, because if you're doing bad, chances are the other companies are doing good. So it's the most ridiculous safety net in existence.
is actually operated as more of a non-profit, and the company is owned by the people who invest in their financial products. One massive asset manager whose power isn't spread out, however, is Fidelity. Fidelity manages $4.9 trillion, making them the largest private asset manager. But not only is Fidelity private, but 49% of the company is still owned by the founding family, the Johnson family. This means that just one family has near majority control over $5 trillion, and we should also note that
But they don't have majority control. That's kind of interesting. That is a very specific number. I wonder what's behind this, because if it's one family, shouldn't they have 51%? So why is it 49? Technically, they don't control it. Or they can be technically even ousted to a degree. Interesting.
this isn't institutional money or trading accounts. Fidelity is almost entirely just retirement accounts. In fact, Fidelity is the largest provider of 401k accounts in the US, managing more than 45 million retirement accounts. So the Johnson family basically has near majority control over America's retirement. Fidelity is currently run by Abigail
Which means they can literally destroy retirement. Well, Biden's already doing it, so I guess he beat them to the punch.
Johnson, the granddaughter of the founder of Fidelity, Edward C. Johnson II.
You know what I love about these, by the way, rich families that stay forever ever in power? There's the reason why generational wealth lasts only 2-3 generations. How much was it? It wasn't more than 4 generations. Typically, generational wealth completely gets destroyed by death. Because, again, did you hear them say granddaughter? Okay, listen. If I would Google her speeches, because there's probably a bunch of her speeches or whatever, she would be probably talking about the most insane crap. Because you need to understand, this wasn't a person born a millionaire. This was a person born a literal trillionaire outside of any possibility of accountability in her life ever. Because, you're a millionaire. Most laws do not apply to you, obviously. You're a multimillionaire. Even lesser laws apply to you. You're a billionaire. Congratulations. You're a trillionaire. You might as well literally live in a parallel dimension. Being a trillionaire is not the same as being a hot girl in the modern days where everything gets just granted to you because you're a hot woman. No. Being a trillionaire is that on steroids times a billion, okay? That is how powerful trillionaires are. Like, she has literally no idea, most likely, what the word no even is. And her views, because she most likely has never dealt with any adversity in her life, are completely twisted and insane.
Abigail Johnson, the
Again, just look at some of these people. Like, look at this. She is literally the granddaughter of a trillionaire, and she has all that access to the wealth, and she doesn't even have good teeth. That is insane. She literally just didn't want this. Everyone else would have fixed their teeth. She probably just didn't care enough. Again, her worldview is probably the most twisted thing you can ever imagine. And you can find these people and you can Google them because all of them do some kind of speeches. Like, what was the last time we heard some insanity? Was it in Davos? I think it was the granddaughter of Schwab or whatever actually was talking. No, does he even have kids? I don't think he had kids. But it was some kind of granddaughter of someone in the World Economic Forum. And they were talking about stuff. And oh my God, was it just blatantly clear they have absolutely no idea how the world functions. It's just the most ludicrous, mind-boggling things ever. You'd think it's like some kind of comedy skit the way these people talk about the world. Look at this. She probably doesn't even know she's ugly. Because everyone who even vaguely hints at that gets executed.
Granddaughter of the founder of Fidelity, Edward C. Johnson II. You've probably never even heard of her, but she's actually the 45th richest person in the world with a net worth of $35.8 billion.
And she literally did nothing to achieve that.
Now, I do want to note that Fidelity has maintained.
Also, small thing to note about these lists of most rich people in the world is, well, here is the good old concept of new money and old money. Now, there's actually two levels of old money, I would argue at this point. Some people, for example, consider Bill Gates old money. Bill Gates is not actually old money, but he does have, his actual net worth is uncalculable because he has investments in art. He owns things that are literally qualified as priceless. What's that stupid family of inbreds that's really rich and controls all the banking in the world? Forgot their name. You probably know the one I'm talking about. Those motherfuckers have a YouTube channel. And one of those YouTube channels is about things that they have in one of their luxurious mansions, and I think, was it Scotland or something? And that mansion, just one single room, is more expensive than half of Europe combined. Because it has literally priceless historic artifacts in it. Rosa Parks' disc and things like that. That literally, well, that's not gonna go for billions. But they have art pieces people don't even think are real anymore. Stuff like that. And there's a whole goddamn room full of it. And it's just one room. And they're like doing YouTube video. This is my favorite chair, which Lincoln shot himself on. And they have all of these things. Their wealth is not in the billions. It's not in the trillions. It's literally uncalculatable because they have all the things that have the most historic significance ever, and they are, well, they're priceless. That's why the word exists, priceless. It is insanity.
Net worth of
Rothschilds. There we go. Those ones sprung into my mind.
$35.8 billion. Now, I do want to note that Fidelity has maintained an extremely clean record.
Oh yeah, wasn't it, by the way, the Rothschilds that were talking crazy at the World Economic Forum? Well, everyone talks crazy in the World Economic Forum, Jesus. They're not even trying to hide it. But, yeah, what was it, a separate thing? But man, you can find these old families that are worth billions and trillions and actually control half of the world's X thing, and all of them are insane. All of them, without question, are literally insane, and they think that money grows on trees and that food grows on, well, food does grow on trees, but you know, that all of the world's problems don't make sense, and it's just like, yeah, you know what's gonna solve poverty? Just getting rid of the homeless people. Yeah, it's like, let's give them a house. What do you mean we don't have houses? What do you mean the houses are owned by... It's just so insane.
Over the years. But nonetheless, it's not great for so much power to be concentrated within just a singular family. So here's the story.
Hey, they already did that with Shell and ExxonMobil. Look at how that turned out. Literally nothing changed.
Of how just one family came to control America's retirement. But first, we need to talk.
No.
Over the past year, you've probably been earning 5% with your savings account while sleeping. But the party
5% is good. Anyone who tells you 5% is bad is trying to scam you. Not saying logically answered is trying to do that, but if you're making 5%, you're doing pretty good.
for a company you know sent from Apple to 1,000 people to deposit $3,000 using on January 19, 1898 to a pretty well-off family. His father, Samuel Jackson, was actually a partner at a leading local department store called C.F. Hovey & Co. As such, Edward had the luxury of pursuing education. For context, only 4.5% of even whites had a bachelor's degree or higher at the time. Edward attended an elite boarding school called
Even
Milton
whites,
Academy.
ooh.
Today, Milton Academy charges $76,000 for boarding students and $66,000 for day students. Around the time Edward graduated, though, in 1916, the world was at the peak of World War I. So Edward enlisted in the United States Naval Reserve and served as a second-class radioman for approximately a year. After his service, he would return to none other than Harvard, where he earned a bachelor's in 1920 and a Juris Doctorate in 1924. On this channel, we've covered several people who secured prestigious law degrees and never used them, like Peter Thiel, but Edward wasn't one of those people. Edward very much went down the traditional path and got a strong job as an associate at a Boston-based law firm called Ropes, Gray, Boyden, and Perkin.
We know how these stories go. Oh, he actually did pursue a career in the thing that he did. Then he worked there for a year or two, figured out, wait a minute, this is stupid, and did something else, or found an opportunity or whatnot.
But Edward also had an interesting side hobby, investing in the stock market. Given his background, you might be inclined to think that Edward was a sophisticated investor,
No.
but this wasn't really the case. Edward was very much part of the 1920s retail investing boom, similar to what we saw in the early 2020s. We don't yet know how the 2020s boom will end, but we do know that the 1920s boom ended in the Great Depression. And Fidelity was actually born during the early stages of the Great Depression.
I'm looking forward to that. Again, I have been saying this for a long time, but listen, I have saved enough money, and every time someone's telling me, hey, there's gonna be an economic downturn and a depression, I'm like, hell yeah, let's go! Because you know what happens? That means stocks are cheap. I have enough money to survive. I have enough money to do whatever, which means I can just buy cheap stocks. Wait 4 years until everything settles down and reap the rewards, while everyone else is struggling to feed themselves. Do not make any mistakes. The moment you have money, something like a economical collapse is just an opportunity to make free tendies. It is the reality. Because, hey, if the stock market never recovers, then probably the world has been destroyed. That's the reality. The stock market will also recover the moment things go down. It's like, yeah, this is just an opportunity to buy stuff for free and then just make free money that shouldn't exist. That's the reality. This is how everyone with money is looking at things. Oh, there's a depression? Well, shit. The cruise yacht that I wanted to buy is a little bit less expensive, so I guess I'm winning at the end. It is a brutal thing. But whenever anyone with money tells you they're afraid of the depression or whatever, you call them a liar because they are either extremely stupid or lying. Probably lying.
On May 1st, 1930. Fidelity started off as a fund called the Fidelity.
Also, the idea that if you're an investor and an economic downturn is bad for you is bullshit, because again, you can just sell your stocks. That's number one. The average person, you know, when the average person who tries to trade stocks fails because they never sell. And the ones who sell see a loss and they're like, oh, well, shit, I guess it's that time to GG out, because everyone wants the easy, fast profits. That's what I'm saying. 5% a year is not bad, okay? 10% is the dream. Anything other than that is going to collapse and you're going to lose all your money. That's just the way that life has been forever, and will keep on going. Hey, and if you have enough money, you don't even need to sell those stocks, because if you have enough money, you literally can just wait it out. You don't even need to sell. Selling would be smart and get you even more money, but you can literally wait. I had investments in stocks when everything collapsed a couple of years ago, and those stocks were minus 30% for, like 2 years. Effectively no profit. And now they're all up 30%. You can literally just wait it out if you don't need the money. That is how life works. And, people with money, again, they can afford all of this. They can just do it. There's no drawback. If you think you're going to survive in the next 5 years, congratulations. Free money, it's there because you already have money. Money finds money.
Fidelity Fund, which managed the money of a couple of wealthy Boston-based investors, one of which was of course Edward. Edward was very much a passive investor though. In fact, for the first 13 years, he didn't do anything at Fidelity. In fact, he spent 15 years as a trust lawyer at Ropes, Gray, Boyden & Perkins. But going into the 1940s, Fidelity's fund investors were starting to get irritated. This is really no surprise in retrospect. The fund was started right about here, so obviously it didn't go anywhere over the next 13 years. As such, the fund's investment...
Wow. Well, admittedly, that's a graph of the whatever times. But it made sense because there weren't machines in Wall Street literally, making a billion sales on a 0.001% swing because that still makes money.
Wanted a new person in charge, and in 1943 they would elect Edward as the new president and director. Within just 2 years, Edward grew the fund from $3 million to $10 million, a seemingly stellar achievement. But this was actually rather misleading. You see, a lot of this growth was actually thanks to Edward infusing some of his family's trust fund into the Fidelity Fund. This wasn't a secret or anything, but Edward's conviction to invest more and seeing AUM rapidly grow made investors confident that Edward was the right man for the job. With their support, Edward would establish Fidelity Management and Research Company LLC in 1946, leading us into Fidelity proper.
Cool, I guess.
There was still a long way to go in terms of becoming the Fidelity that we know today. Back in 1946, Fidelity was still very much a background operation that served background investors. Their specialty was professional money management and white glove client services for wealthy investors, which set the stage for a new generation of investors. In fact, many of Edward's investing philosophies are what eventually became common knowledge. For example, I'm sure you've all heard that when investing, you shouldn't follow the crowd. There's even that one famous Warren Buffett quote that's like, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful." Well, this ideology was actually pioneered by Edward.
You have to give it to Warren Buffett and his quotes. He has a quote about everything in this in this context. When others see, you look away. When others look away, you look at. It's like Warren Buffett has a quote like that for everything.
Back in the 40s, who believed that it was better to take intelligent risks rather than follow the crowd. Throughout all of the 50s and 60s, Fidelity operated as a money manager for the wealthy. But over the years, they have slowly trended toward the retail market, and this expansion started in 1977 when Edward Johnson II stepped down and let his son Edward Johnson III take over the company. Edward III wanted to make Fidelity a household name. This was exactly what Charles Schwab was working on, and Jack Bogle had just started Vanguard, so you could say that Edward felt the currents of change. With that in mind, Edward started implementing measures that would make it easier for everyday people to engage with the market. This began with becoming the first company to accept checks into money market funds. They would also become the first company to offer quotes 24 hours a day through a computerized telephone system. Before making too many changes though, Edward made the smart decision to consolidate power. In 1980, he formed a new independent entity that was purely owned by his family and employees of the company, which is actually very important to note. Fidelity doesn't really have any outside investors or private equity owners. It's 49% owned by the family and 51% owned by their employees. It's very impressive that they've been able to maintain that structure through all of these years. But anyway, moving into the 1980s.
So, what's the trick here? It's like 2% owned by someone who is, not immediate family, but like extended family. Is that the trick? Because that is a trick. I mean, getting 49% is pretty decent consolidation of power, don't get me wrong. But they would want 51%. They don't want 51% on paper to not stand out. So there has to be some kind of trick here.
In that structure through all of these years. But anyway, moving into the 1980s, Fidelity would see two developments that basically made the modern Fidelity. First, in 1982, they entered the brand new 401k market, which, fun fact, wasn't even created till 1978. And two, in 1984, Fidelity entered the brand new computer-based stock trading industry. This gave them the perfect entry into the employer-sponsored retirement market, which launched the company to new heights. But not all of this was thanks to Edward III. Another key player was Robert Posen. Like Edward II, Robert was a lawyer by trade, having graduated from Yale. He would go on to be an executive at Fidelity in 1987, who managed the company's global portfolio, research teams, and insurance and credit card efforts. He would even rise to become the CEO of Fidelity in 1997. He only served as CEO for 4 years, but during that time, he oversaw Fidelity's assets grow from $500 billion to $900 billion, largely thanks to the dot-com boom. And that brings us into the modern-day Fidelity.
Interesting. So what about the dot-com crash?
It was only in the 2000s that Fidelity got into the indexing game. Until then, they were purely money managers and retirement account providers. Their first ETF was a NASDAQ-based ETF launched in 2003, but despite their ubiquitous brand name, Fidelity has struggled with building a dominant ETF business. Fidelity does manage tens of billions in ETFs, but in comparison to Vanguard and BlackRock, this is nothing. For perspective, the SPY alone has $500 billion in AUM, and the VU has $1 trillion in AUM. Likely the biggest reason for the discrepancy is Fidelity's high expense ratios. Take the Fidelity Total Bond ETF for example. They charge an expense ratio of 0.36%, which heavily eats into your yields. For comparison, the VU has an expense ratio that is less than a tenth of that at 0.03%. Breaking into index funds isn't the only area in which Fidelity has struggled either. Another soft spot for Fidelity is venture capital. Fidelity used to have a wing called Fidelity Ventures.
By the way, what are index funds? Free money, essentially.
But that was shut down in 2010. And that brings us to the current leader of Fidelity, Abigail Johnson, who has had a rather tumultuous past. She joined Fidelity in 1988 after attending Harvard as an analyst and portfolio manager. She worked her way up the rungs of the company and eventually became the company's president in 2001, and this is where the odd behavior began. In 2004, she would try to turn the rest of her family against her father and vote him out of the company. Apparently, this was because
Of course she did. I mean, obviously. Jesus.
she disagreed with the direction her father was taking, but it was her father and
What would be this direction, though?
grandfather who had taken the company from 0 to 1 trillion in assets, so it's pretty hard to see that perspective. To be honest, this seems like more of a power play. Fortunately, Abigail's coup was unsuccessful in 2004, but Abigail would eventually get the top job 10 years later in 2014. Since then, her biggest contribution seems to be a more crypto-first approach. For example, in 2018,
Oh boy, I'm sure that... You see what I mean about generational wealth? She's probably insane. She's cuckoo for those Cocoa Puffs.
they launched their own crypto execution and custody platform for hedge funds and institutional investors.
Jesus.
Similarly, in 2021, they applied for a
How did
Bitcoin
that work
ETF,
out?
which is currently their largest ETF in terms of assets, coming in at 9.2 billion. They have
Okay.
also allowed investors to buy crypto in their 401k accounts. Likely the
By
biggest
the way, the reason Bitcoin is gonna succeed, and it's gonna inevitably keep going up throughout its lifespan, is because guess who now owns a lot of Bitcoin? Her. Vanguard, BlackRock, all of these places own a lot of Bitcoin. So they are invested. And as long as Bitcoin and whatnot is not regulated, man, they can do a lot with it. Again, Bitcoin crashes, that's good. That means you can buy more Bitcoin and then make more profit because you bought more Bitcoin.
sign that they're huge crypto fans, though, is their Bitcoin price prediction. I'm sure you've all heard of $1 million price predictions or even $10 million price predictions, but Fidelity actually has a $1 billion Bitcoin price prediction. They
Yep.
even have a chart for it. To be honest, I'm pretty sure they're just
Wait, they have a chart for it? How accurate is that, I wonder? How does this account for the halvings and whatnots? By the way, if you think you understand this chart, you don't. You just don't, okay? Trust me, you just don't.
for it. To be honest, I'm pretty sure they're just making outrageous statements to drive more people into their crypto products.
Probably
But still,
also,
this
yes.
just goes to show how optimistic they are about crypto. Looking forward, Fidelity isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Oh, let's actually look at Bitcoin. Cool. Bum. Let's. I'm gonna check Bitcoin. How's it doing? Okay. Crypto. Wait a second. And Bitcoin is at 62K. Oh, it's going down in the last day. What the hell? Whoa, it dropped by 2K. Okay, very cool. How much are we up at Bitcoin? 44%. Again, let's see maximum. Oh shit! Oh yeah! Wow! Look at that. Nice. Man, you know what's funny? But I didn't do it. I thought the floor is 15K when it started dropping 2 years ago. I thought that's gonna be the floor. I was right. Didn't buy any at that point, sadly, but I did buy at other huge drop-off points. So it's all good in the hood. And guess what? This is most likely gonna happen again. Most likely gonna happen again. And when it's 20K or 30K, I'm gonna buy more. Again, literally up 44%. I mean, there's no reason not to just do it, right? I can wait. If I buy now at the peak and it goes down 50% in 5 years, I'm still making a profit, and probably a decent profit to counteract the negative downturns.
But it does seem like they're having trouble appealing to younger generations despite their crypto offerings. It seems that younger generations
They just need to tell you that they can give the younger generations like a 200% return on investment in a week. That's how you get them, because the younger generations are autistic.
aren't the biggest fan of their UI or desktop first approach. But even if Fidelity knocked these out of the park, it's
No, the young generations think that monkey JPEGs have value. They're just idiots. They're just idiots. That's it.
unclear just how popular Fidelity would be with younger generations. The reality is that newer generations like newer products. It's the same reason why Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok all have different age demographics despite offering similar services. Fidelity has been around for nearly 100 years, but they've really only served one generation of retail investors. So there may be a slow change in the coming years and decades, but that's how the Johnson family rose to control
Wait, is this like one generation of retail investment? Seems not true.
America's retirement. If you're interested in deeper
But to be honest, I'm not sure what a generation of investors actually counts as. So, maybe I'm wrong.
dives, interviews with insiders,
Well, anyway, that was logically answered. Oh boy, man. I love finance so much. Because at this point, it makes no sense. Everything is free money as long as you have money. That's just the way the world is. It is what it is. Anyway, bye.